All right, let's dive right into this explainer and take a close look at the intense life and really the tragic end of the King of Pop. Michael Jackson's story is one of the most thoroughly documented yet somehow deeply misunderstood narratives in modern history. We're going to break down the timeline of his life, looking closely at how the unparalleled heights of his fame were intrinsically linked to his darkest, most painful struggles.
To really wrap our heads around Michael Jackson, we have to start with the ultimate paradox of his life. On the one hand, you have the global icon, a man holding an astonishing 39 Guinness World Records, and someone who, even between 2013 and 2023, ranked as the #1 highest-earning deceased celebrity in the world. But then, contrast that with the devastatingly dark reality at the time of his death. The autopsy revealed an emaciated man whose stomach contained only drugs, not a single piece of food. It really makes you wonder, how does someone achieve literally everything an artist could possibly dream of, yet end up in such a tragic physical state?
Section 1. Trauma and Early Stardom.
Let's look at how this paradox builds from the very beginning. Born in Gary, Indiana, he was the 8th of 10 children, growing up in a tiny 2-bedroom house. It's tough to hear, but his incredible talent was actually forged in a deeply abusive environment. Forced into the family band at just 6 years old, Michael faced severe physical abuse from his father Joseph, who would beat the kids for tiny mistakes during rehearsals and constantly mock the shape of Michael's nose. But perhaps the most shocking detail, which was confirmed by his doctor after his death, is that at just 13 years old, his father gave him injections to delay puberty. The goal was simply to preserve his high-pitched singing voice. This decision subjected him to numerous health issues later on, and it's a stark reminder of how the intense pressures of childhood fame can permanently alter a person's trajectory.
Now, 47 million. That staggering number represents the massive audience of viewers who tuned in to watch the Motown 25 broadcast back in 1983. This was the exact moment he performed his very first signature moonwalk to Billie Jean. At this point, he had completely transitioned from a child star to a massive solo phenomenon with his record-breaking albums Off the Wall and Thriller. He wasn't just a singer anymore, he was a global spectator.
Section 2. Peak Success to Physical Pain.
This golden era of global stardom quickly brought on some severe physical consequences. Actually, a single record-breaking commercial shoot literally sparked a devastating chain of events. In 1983, Jackson signed a $5 million promotional deal with Pepsi, which was just an unheard-of amount of money at the time. But during the shoot, his hair caught fire. It left him with severe third-degree burns on his scalp. To fix these agonizing injuries, he had to undergo intense scalp treatments and repeated reconstructive surgeries. And to manage all that immense pain, he began relying on high-dose painkillers. This right here was the exact starting point of a lifelong, devastating drug dependency.
It's actually kind of fascinating to look back at the wild public rumors that used to swirl around him and then compare them to reality. For instance, the media claimed he slept in an oxygen chamber so he could live to 150. That was a completely false rumor sparked by a single leaked photo. Even more damaging, people claimed he bleached his skin to hide his African-American identity. But the reality? He was diagnosed with vitiligo, a disorder that causes white spots on the skin. He used gloves, hats, and long sleeves to cover these spots, before eventually having a skin tone evened out entirely. This medical reality was confirmed by his dermatologist in 1993 and definitively proven in his 2009 autopsy.
Despite all that physical pain and the constant public scrutiny, he spent a staggering $17 million back in 1988 to build his 2,700-acre dream sanctuary, the Neverland Ranch in California. He filled it with a Ferris wheel, a movie theater, and a zoo. It really seemed like he was trying to buy back the innocent childhood he was never allowed to experience.
Section 3. Allegations and Downfall.
That very sanctuary soon became the focal point of the most devastating chapters of his life. Looking strictly at the facts from the sources, his life really derails starting in 1993 with serious allegations involving a 13-year-old boy. The situation escalated when his own sister, LaToya, publicly called him a pedophile, a statement she did later retract, claiming her husband forced her to say it. Ultimately, due to a lack of testimony from the boy, the criminal investigation closed, and Jackson settled the civil case out of court for $23 million. Then, a decade later, in 2003, completely separate charges were brought against him. This led to a grueling 4-month trial where, in the end, he was acquitted of all charges.
But even with the acquittal, the fallout was, well, catastrophic. The investigations, the police raids, and the heavy public judgment plunged him into profound depression and severe anxiety. He canceled massive world tours, found himself drowning in millions of dollars of debt, and was eventually forced to sell Neverland Ranch. But perhaps the most dangerous side effect of it all was his crippling inability to sleep. His insomnia became so extreme that at one point he went 5 continuous days without a single moment of sleep.
Section 4.
The tragic final mystery.
This brings us to his final, really desperate pursuit of relief as he prepared for a 2009 comeback tour. He hadn't released an album since 2001, and this tour, titled This Is It, was supposed to be his massive return to clear his debts. Over 1 million tickets sold in just 1 hour. But the immense pressure of the comeback, combined with his relentless insomnia, just pushed him over the edge. Desperate for rest, his body's massive tolerance to standard drugs made normal sleeping pills completely useless. This led his personal physician to introduce a powerful surgical anesthetic called Propofol to literally knock him unconscious. Jackson became so heavily dependent on it that he casually referred to this intense hospital-grade anesthetic as milk. Crucially, this drug is only meant to be administered with vital monitoring medical equipment to measure blood balance, equipment his personal physician simply did not have in the house. It really highlights the deadly danger of celebrities being surrounded by yes-men who prioritize requests over basic medical safety.
Let's actually slow down for a second and walk through those final agonizing hours on June 24th and 25th, 2009. At 12:30 a.m., he arrived home from rehearsing for his comeback tour. By 1:30 a.m., after failing to fall asleep, his doctor administered mild sedatives like diazepam and lorazepam, but they had absolutely zero effect. For hours, he begged for relief. Finally, at 10:30 a.m., after relentless pleading, his doctor administered a dose of Propofol. Shortly after, Jackson's breathing stopped and his pulse weakened. The doctor attempted CPR, but tragically delayed calling an external medical team until well past 12:15 p.m. He was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. At 2:30 p.m., Michael Jackson was pronounced dead.
The autopsy painted a seriously horrific picture. As we touched on earlier, here was a man surviving entirely on drugs. His body was completely emaciated and covered in injection marks from years of taking painkillers. His tolerance had built up so much that doses lethal to a normal person had almost no effect on him. The sheer negligence of administering Propofol in an unmonitored residential setting ultimately led to his personal physician being convicted and sentenced to 4 years in prison. The public reaction was instant and unprecedented. The news of his death literally crashed the internet, and his memorial became the most watched non-sports broadcast in television history.
When you step back and look at his life structurally like this, it is profoundly unsettling. From an abusive childhood forged into superstardom, to record-breaking fame that brought devastating physical injury, and finally, to controversies and an insurmountable addiction born out of immense pain. He achieved everything an artist could ever dream of: fame, wealth, records that will likely never be broken. But we really have to ask, was this incredibly tragic, lonely ending the inevitable cost of his unimaginable success?